could be one of its most controversial moves ever, school officials in San Francisco are proposing that more than 50% of the books on high school reading lists be written by authors of color. They say it's an attempt to make sure that district's ethnically diverse students see themselves in the school curriculum.
In San Francisco this week, there is a very heated debate going on about quality literature and what kids should be obliged to read. Two black leaders in the San Francisco school system want high school students not merely to read more, which they do want, but more of what is written by writers who are members of a minority, as many of the students are. Here's ABC's Ken Kashiwahara.
Isn't Romeo and Juliet a tragedy? Yeah.
Under the proposal, classics by Shakespeare, Chaucer, and Mark Twain would no longer be required, although they still could be assigned. But 4 out of the 10 books students must read each year would have to come from a list of non-white authors. School board member Steve Phillips, who co-authored the proposal, says students need to identify with their cultural background.
If there's literary excellence of all authors, why doesn't the curriculum reflect a broader diversity of authors? And we haven't done that.
But the idea of required reading based on the author's ethnicity has some critics calling it literary affirmative action, others political correctness run amok. Veteran English teacher Denise Chandler calls the proposal irrational.
Writers who have either stood the test of time or who are relevant to our youngsters don't glorify any cultural or ethnic or geographic place.
Students are split on the issue.
It's stupid. Why would you have to judge the story on the person who wrote it and not the story itself? I think they should just have authors of all different races, because certain things that people need to learn about can't really be expressed by white people.
The school board will vote on the issue in 2 weeks. By then, it is likely to become even more divisive than it is now.
San Francisco School Board will vote later this month on a proposal that would force high school students to read books by minority authors in order to graduate. Currently, all seniors are required to read 3 works of literature: Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, and Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn. Now Steve Phillips wants the students to be required also to read works by minority authors. He's a member of the school board and a co-sponsor of the measure. Meanwhile, Sally Pipes is the president of the Pacific Research Institute. Good morning to both of you.
Morning.
Good morning, Katie. Mr. Phillips, let me start with you if I could. Tell me why you wanted to come up with this proposal.
Well, Katie, we're trying to prepare our students for life in the 21st century. The world has changed, the composition of our student body has changed, but the curriculum has not kept pace with that changes. And we're paying the price in terms of academic achievement.
How so?
That we have demonstrably lower achievement levels than what we want to see for different students of color, particularly African Americans as a group and Latino students as a group. So this proposal is designed to diversify our list of great writers so that we can produce culturally literate citizens of the world.
Mr. Phillips, I'm just curious, how do you think integrating more minority authors would improve achievement for students of color?
One of the things that you hear very often is that the current list of great works that we actually have does not do enough to speak to the life situations of our students. We have, San Francisco is the most racially diverse school district in the country, and we have almost 90% of our students are students of color. And to the extent that the curriculum does not speak to their life experiences and their cultures, there's less engagement and less intellectual stimulation on the part of our students, and that's something we're trying to turn around.
So under your proposal, students would no longer be required to read, say, Chaucer, Shakespeare, and Twain?
Well, what we're doing is expanding the overall list of works that students are going to read. And so there'll still be the traditional classes. We want to expand that notion that this is a dramatically different society now, and that we have to rethink what we can conceptualize as the great works as we move into a multicultural 21st century.
Mr. Phillips, what kind of books are you talking about introducing into the curriculum? Can you give us some examples?
Well, that process is going to be finalized by staff and students, but you look at somebody like Toni Morrison or Gabriel Garcia Marquez or Amy Tan. I mean, 2 of those 3 are actually Pulitzer Prize winners. And so this notion of there's only one set of great works that is handed down to us a century or so ago and never should change and never should modify as society changes really is no longer effective in today's world.
I feel a very profound sense of moral urgency around what's happening to our young people. And I feel we have to take action and do something. And that's the spirit that this comes forward in. And I'm willing to look for how to, make different accommodations to have it be something that's workable. But the status quo is no longer tolerable, and somebody has to speak up and say that.
Is it excessive political correctness or a justifiable attempt to make education reflect the community? Since we first reported on a proposal for a race-based high school reading list last night, a political storm has erupted.
Just let me read quickly from Rob Morris's column today, which I'm sure you've already read, Steve. When I was a kid in New England and racist members of the Boston School Committee resisted integration with every tool of stupidity at their command, I developed a theory that school boards exist to promote ignorance. A quarter of a century later, now that I'm supposedly enlightened San Francisco, I find the theory still holds. And he goes on from there. Yeah. This is not a conservative. This isn't even a moderate. You're going to take a lot of heat for this.
What is wrong with diversifying, given the fact that white students account for less than 12% of the student body?
I see this whole proposal really, it's about racial equality, and it's political correctness at its worst, and this is not what we want to do. We don't want a multicultural society in that sense. We want all people to be American and to have the best opportunity to compete, and therefore it's important that we choose the best authors based on the content so our students will perform well, not on mandates and quotas by types of authors.
Some teachers, like Denise Chandler, call the plan offensive, ridiculous, and harmful.
I think it's impossible and ill-advised in an enormous way. I can't understand why we're doing it.
I don't think anybody predicted quite just what a big way he
become a national story. The city looks silly. That this whole thing has been so badly handled. Yes, there's a germ of a good argument, and you fairly describe it, but this thing has been rolled out as a here it comes, you've got to read these books sort of things, and it is not going well.
And it is typical of the atmosphere in America now over race. It's long before O.J. Simpson, but O.J. Simpson and Rodney King have heightened the argument on this, and now everything comes a battle between black and white or people of color versus white, and it's all BS.
Right, yeah.
I mean,
well,
black
what's
kids
BS?
and Latino kids and Asian kids need to be engaged in school. What is wrong with encouraging them to read something?
There's a difference between
and I'm not saying knock the classics out. I'm an English lit major in college. I understand the importance of Chaucer, but I also understand the importance of Richard Wright.
But there's a big difference between encouraging and setting a quota to say you can only have this many books out of the required books you have to read by white authors, and the rest have to be by minority authors, and then no, that is a semantic.
They're city officials. Great. Whether you call it a quota, which is often spun that way so everybody can get heated. And now they see, or a goal. The only way the kids are going to be encouraged to read is that you require them to read certain things. It's more important that they learn to read.
It's also important that you have kids be excited by teachers, and you can be excited by Chaucer as much as you can be.
An emotionally charged debate is underway right now in San Francisco over the role of race in the school district's reading list. Good evening, I'm Dan Ash.
And I'm Carolyn Joe. Changes are being proposed that would require students read a certain number of books by minority authors. It's an idea that is provoking both outrage and applause. Channel 7's Heather Ishimaro is live now at the meeting with the details. Heather?
Well, Carolyn, the school board hasn't even voted whether or not to vote on this issue yet tonight. That's because the debate is still going on, and this meeting started at 7:15 this evening. That's how intense the feelings are here. Heated debate over what's best for San Francisco students. On the one side, a proposal to update the school district's required reading list to make it more multicultural, more inclusive, to reflect the racial diversity of the student body. On the other side, those who call that proposal political correctness run amok. Tonight, the two sides faced off in front of the school board.
This idea that there is something sacrosanct about Chaucer is ill-founded.
Ray Richardson owns a black literature bookstore in San Francisco. She's one of many here tonight supporting sweeping changes in the San Francisco School District's reading list.
As a student, I had to learn the prologue of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. And I had to learn it in its original Old English. And I, for 65 years, have had it frozen up here, and it has done nothing for me but take up space.
You are not equipped professionally in all other ways to tell teachers what to teach or how to teach it.
To succeed in this culture in this country, you need to understand European literature.
We see that it's not working. We need the students to be motivated. We need them to like what they're learning.
This is turning into a very, very lengthy meeting. In fact, right now, more than 200 people are still inside Everett Middle School waiting on an official decision by the Board of Education. Now, the two commissioners who came up with this proposal for a new English literature curriculum say that their plan is meant to bring more diversity to the kinds of books that students read. And this proposal would require that students read more books by authors of color.
San Francisco schools become the first in the nation to require a culturally diverse reading list. The school district approved an amended proposal requiring students to read at least one book by a minority writer. The school board hopes the decision will more accurately mirror the student body.
We'd like them to be able to see themselves in literature that reflects their own history and culture, but also see themselves in the experience of others in other histories and other cultures.
A 30-member curriculum committee made up of parents, teachers, and community members now has the job of selecting the books for the new list. That panel will present the suggestions to the full board in May. The new list should take effect this fall.
In San Francisco, school officials, parents, and students are reacting today to the new requirement that students read at least one book by a minority author. The school board decision that came late yesterday was a compromise. Some people wanted to amend the district's required reading list to include at least 40% minority authors. Others complained that would have set reading quotas based on race. The decision means students will have to read at least one book by authors such as Alice Walker, Toni Morrison, or Amy Tan. 3 previously required works by white authors, Chaucer, Shakespeare, and Mark Twain, will become optional.
Phillips? Aye. Ms. Wynn? Aye. And Dr. Del Portillo?
Aye.
7 ayes.
I would like to suggest that all the members of the board be noted as sponsoring the resolution.
The original proposal required that 4 out of the 10 books students read each year be written by non-white authors. That quota sparked a lot of controversy and 3 hours of emotional testimony from parents, teachers, and students.
I want to learn about Latino Americans. I want to learn about Asian Americans. I want to learn about Americans.
The approved proposal means students will be required to read books written by minority authors, but there's no set number. It'll be up to each individual school.
I just think it's a long overdue debate to really look at what should our young people be reading as we move into the future and as we change our society. So there's some level of insecurity and fears on some people's parts, but I don't think that's really necessary. We can build a new multiracial society where everyone is validated and everyone is respected.